me up till my body's more. Use these legs till my muscles have grown.
Walden Pond, a source of beauty for over 300 years for the New Englanders who have visited its shores and surrounding woodlands. Located in Concord, Massachusetts, Walden not only serves as a place for recreation, but the renowned waters served also as inspiration for one of America's fundamental literary movements of the 19th century, Transcendentalism. Beginning as a religious and philosophical movement in the late 1820s, those who preached Transcendentalism believed in the inherent goodness of man and nature as well as the corruptive powers of structures, organizations, and pressures of modern society. Transcendentalism as a movement was rooted in the rejection of the New England traditions of Calvinism, such as predestination and the Trinity of God. Those who followed the movement strived towards self-reliance as they believed it was the only way to fulfill one's potential as a part of the Oversoul, the greater being that connects all components of nature from the minute leaf on the ground to the complex being of man. Early Transcendentalists asserted that between all living things there is an occult and independent relationship, and in order for one to reach one's full potential in American society, one must have a full understanding of this relationship.
Transcendentalism, in my own words, is defined as a feeling of unity with the universe. Some people will call that God, but it's this like complete connection with something that's very spiritual. And so like the idea of transcending means to kind of rise above what gives you your physical existence in this world to a spiritual state of being, so that when you're practicing like transcendentalism, you're actually rising above like the necessary physical needs that you normally address as a human being, and you're taking the time out of your busy life to reflect spiritually on your existence.
This radical divergence from Christianity rendered many skeptical, as it provided a completely different way of thought. Many also scoffed at the movement for lacking rigidity that humans find themselves comfortable with. Charles Dickens even coined the movement as whatever was unintelligible would certainly be transcendental. Despite receiving such dubious criticism, Transcendentalism encompassed some of the greatest thinkers and writers of the time. The grandfather of Transcendentalism, Ralph Waldo Emerson, provided the fundamental thought behind the movement in two central works, his speech, The American Scholar, and the essay, Self-Reliance.
In Self-Reliance, he talks about how imitation is suicide, that a person needs to be able to understand his or her own ideas, because each person needs to, for the sake of society as well as for the sake of oneself, each person needs to be able to, as he say, testify to the particular ray which lands on the eyes of each individual. And what that means to me is that if I don't know how to handle the life that I've been given, or if I don't know how to do something with the life that I've been given, it's kind of a wasted space. In other words, America really, in many ways, depends on all of us doing what we can with the life that we have individually. And the more that we can do with that individual life, then the more America, our society as a whole, evolves, the more it benefits from that. So in Self-Reliance, that's really kind of what he's trying to say, is that you have to take everything that you can from your life so that not only do you become self-reliant, but also so that the society can benefit from your self-reliance.
A student of Emerson who embodied these ideals through his life was Henry David Thoreau. He is considered to be the manifestation of Emerson's teachings into one's life through his pursuit of the transcendentalist ideals through action. In order to do this, Thoreau famously retreated into solitude for 2 years in a cabin he built on the shores of Walden Pond. During this period, he accounted his thoughts and actions in his book Walden, which is considered to be proof that one can lead a life consistent with the transcendentalist teachings. Living in the one-room cabin, Thoreau expressed his ideals through his devout self-reliance and commitment, as shown by his refusal to pay taxes for the land he occupied. In addition to these central writers of Transcendentalism, other contributors include poets such as Walt Whitman and Margaret Fuller.
I think I like Walt Whitman's approach to it, because when he wrote his poetry, it was about coming to it. A lot of people have trouble with Emerson's tone and even Thoreau's tone, that they're speaking down to you as though they had some enlightened state of being and you don't get it, and they're telling you how to live, basically. So a lot of students feel that way about them, whereas you come to Walt Whitman and it's open and it's free and it's inviting. And a lot of people find Whitman to be that type of poet, the poet of their lifetime.
Though these works can still be found on shelves in nearly every bookstore, many believe the ideals to be lost in modern society. What was once a place of recluse is now a tourist attraction, with a major highway 100 feet away from Thoreau's cabin, and a bookstore profiting off the exploitation of the transcendental legacy, perpetuating the materialism that Thoreau and Emerson so ardently scorned. All of this modernization poses the question: has society strayed too far away from transcendental ideas, and is it even possible to return to them? Currently, 56% of all Americans have at least one social networking profile, and there are 645,750,000 Twitter users, and a groundbreaking 1.19 billion Facebook users worldwide, with that number increasing exponentially.
I think it's taken away from people's ability to critically think. And, you know, Thoreau and Emerson and all these transcendentalist philosophers, that's exactly what they were. They were thinkers, and so they took time to critically think about like everyday life and as they knew it. And very few people do that. I mean, you ask someone to like write down the reflections of the day in a journal, they're not doing that. But what they are doing are recording all the minuscule, mundane details of their life on things like Twitter and Facebook. And so you'll know what someone had for lunch, or you'll know, like, you know, that they were at the Bruins game last night, and they'll be like, hey, at the Bruins. But they're not like sitting there critically thinking about why they're at the Bruins.
Through online media, society today is able to idolize celebrities based on superficial values such as beauty and fame.
Society has made it, I think, very easy for us to lose a hold of ourselves, to get kind of washed out by stars that are on TV or, you know, People magazine. We're learning about and following and paying attention to other people's lives rather than our own. And we're also able to be entertained 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to an extent that we don't have to think for ourselves.
These pressures not only contribute to the mental health epidemic, but they also hinder one's ability to reach their full potential and be in tune with their inner self.
The most pressure is academic pressure, I think, on a lot of people, especially at WA, because it's such a competitive environment. And recently it's mostly been the whole college process, because there's so much pressure to, you know, get into a good school or make sure that, I don't know, you do everything right. And then there's I guess the pressure is the balance. You have to, you know, stay doing your academics, and you have to have all these extracurriculars, but you also want to go out with your friends and have fun too. So it's almost like the pressure to have a normal life, which, like, all the other surrounding pressures make it harder to do.
Conversely, isolating oneself completely from society, as most people associate with the transcendental lifestyle, renders a man no better than one who indulges themselves in the pressures of society. An example of one inspired by the transcendentalist movement and ideals to an extreme is the infamous Chris McCandless, who notoriously sought solitude in the Alaskan wilderness.
The sad part about what happened with him is that he took it to an extreme that didn't need to exist. Thoreau didn't go into the woods to survive. He never said it was to survive. Thoreau went into the woods, and he wanted to understand the essence of life. And he left the woods, as he said, for as good a reason as I went in. Right? I mean, in other words, there wasn't a challenge that he was trying to surpass. There wasn't an obstacle he was trying to overcome. He just wanted to kind of take a brief, you know, sort of separate himself from society a bit so that he could see what was kicking around there in his head and philosophically, right? McCandless was trying to survive. He was trying to say, I can overcome nature. And that can't happen.
This tale of isolation would later produce a best-selling book as well as an Oscar-nominated film. On his deathbed, McCandless expressed the essential relationship between man and society through his journal entry of reading, "Happiness is only real when shared." The way to lead a life consistent with transcendental values in today's society is as simple as maintaining a balance between solitude and society, an acknowledgement of man's role in nature and his responsibility to reach his full potential. But one may ask if the works are still relevant.
If you read Walden closely, you know, the stuff that Thoreau is complaining about in Walden is the same stuff that we complain about today. You know, he's living in the 1800s, like moving into like the later, you know, 19th century. And if you think about that Victorian era and how ornate the homes were during the Victorian age, from like the tapestries on the walls to, like, you know, just how big the homes were and compartmentalized, and the need to like furnish all those homes. which popped up quite a bit around Concord in Massachusetts. A lot of Walden. Thoreau's kind of lost in the details of like showing how people have become lost in the design of their own homes and like owning real estate and then having to furnish that, and how like life has become too complicated in that sense. So he felt a need to write what he was writing back then because of what he was seeing, and I think he would walk around today, and yes, we have modern technology and we have all these other things going on that didn't exist in his time period, but it's still the same issues. What people are lost in, where he saw society going, how men like were working on, like what were they working for? Were they working to own a home that was larger than their neighbors, and then were they working to furnish those homes with like the trends of the day and to fill their homes up with them, and then you have to take care of those things. He's still talking about the things that we all complain about now. Like, are we living for the right things in our lifetime?
In terms of relevancy, the problems which inspired Transcendentalism nearly 200 years ago are present today, but the solution lies within the thoughts of those New England men so long ago.
O me, O life,
of the questions of these recurring,
of the endless trains of the faithless, of cities filled with the foolish,
of myself, forever reproaching myself, for who more foolish than I, and who more faithless,
of the eyes that vainly crave the light,
of the objects mean, of the struggle ever renewed, of the poor results of all the plodding and sordid crowds I see around me,
of the empty and useless years of the rest, with the rest of me intertwined.
The question, O me, so sad, recurring.
What good amid these, O me, O life?
Answer, that you are here, that life exists, and identity.
that the powerful play goes on, and you will contribute a verse.